if we as the church now can demonstrate a kind of robustness, not in a hard sense, but in a determined, compassionate, all-out loving sense, to not give up on one another, to keep persevering, keep loving, keep forgiving, keep learning together, I think that is magnetic.
Well, welcome back to the Life Explored podcast, and with me today I have Nick Cole. Nick Cole, who is the director of Samaritans Purse for the UK. So, Nick, you previously you've been the director of Samaritans Purse for the last 10 years. Previously, operations director and elder at Tunbridge Baptist Church, correct? Yeah,
That's right.
You are, so currently you're involved in missionary work, and you've also served as director of mobilization and international media coordinator, OMF International. Is that role you still have, or were you on?
No, so that was a few years ago now, but I learned a lot about what God's doing through his people in the churches in East Asia. So that was a wonderful experience.
And you're also known as Mr. Shoebox, right?
That's right. So I get to lead, I have the privilege to lead the Operation Christmas Child Shoebox project for Samaritans Purse UK. And as you said, I've been doing that about a decade now.
And education-wise, you went to University of Cambridge.
That's right. Privileged to do that.
You have been involved in the Tunbridge Baptist Church for a long time, sort of in the world mission really, and using shoeboxes to engage the wider community, not just Tunbridge, Wales, not just the UK, but globally, right? And you've run London marathons. 2016, 2017, 2021. Is that all of them, or is there more?
I did it a couple of times. Yeah, I got to run the one that was postponed twice for COVID, which was absolutely fantastic because it ended up being in September, so you could train over the warm summer months. And actually, it was fantastic because they started us, because it was still post-COVID. They started us a little bit further apart, and so it was actually quite moving because people could see the name. Everyone puts their name on their T-shirt. And I was very reluctant to do that the first time I ran. And people, no, you must do it. Because hundreds of complete strangers call out your name and cheer you on. And they could do it even more so in 2021 because we were a bit more spaced out. And I remember when we ran round the Cutty Sark, the cheering, because it was the first time we'd been out after the pandemic amongst so many people. And I remember the sort of hairs standing up on the back of my neck as I was being cheered. And I just thought, it's just wonderful to be out amongst people again and God's creation, all these beautiful people being so positive. And I got to run the London Marathon to raise funds from all the supporters for Samaritans Purse for the Shoebox project. We actually bought enough funds to provide a shipping container for our partners in Romania to use to store the discipleship, the teaching materials for the children, because we send the New Testaments, the student workbooks, or something we call The Greatest Journey, which is a follow-up teaching course for the children that receive shoeboxes. We send enough of that for 2 seasons because it's much more economic to do that. But obviously in the in-between year, they've got to store it somewhere. So that was my project with the COVID London Marathon. So I'm very, very happy memories of that time.
So when you're training, you sort of go on the roads and sort of, it must have been sort of not a lot of traffic. It must have been quite good to train during that time.
Yes, that's right. It would, because, and we remember that period where we were allowed out for 45 minutes. So I did actually get stronger. Well, I got stronger and stronger. But then the trouble is the marathon was postponed for 6 months, and then it was postponed for a whole year. So I couldn't quite sustain it. So there was peak to drop. And so in fact, I finished the training here. We're sitting here in Rugby. The office of Samaritans Purse relocated in 2021 to Coventry, and I relocated to Leamington
Yeah.
Spa at that time. So actually, I did the final few runs on the lanes around Leamington, so, which was great because it was a way of learning the new place that I was living in. Yeah.
And you live in Coventry now, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's where you're originally from, is Tunbridge Wells.
Yes, that's right. So I was 20 years down in Tunbridge when I was working for OMF, which stands for the Overseas Missionary Fellowship. So that's a church planting ministry across all the countries of East Asia. And I was involved in the promotional and media work, raising resources, getting people to pray. But their UK base was just east of Sevenoaks. So that's what took me to Kent. And then I transferred to join Samaritans Purse in 2015. And their offices were on the north side of London. But I was so passionate to be involved in the ministry that it was worth the most horrible commute around the M25. And so I was delighted when we said, right, actually, we're going to relocate to the Midlands, mainly so that we could have a big permanent warehouse for the shoeboxes. Because what would happen year on year down in Tunbridge, it was a big faith challenge. What we would do is try and find a vacant shop or a warehouse that we could bring all the shoeboxes in once we collected them up in mid to late November, because each and every shoebox needs to be checked to make sure the gifts inside are suitable and safe for the children, that there aren't liquids that are going to break in transit and not only spoil that box, but all the other box in the outer carton. And we put 1,000 outer cartons, 10 shoeboxes per carton, so 10,000 on a truck. So there's a lot of work there. It might only take a minute or two to check each box, but obviously we need space to do that. Over the years, it was becoming more and more difficult. It was more of all this sort of huge faith challenge. We put on our knees praying, Lord, please with this agent, or so we checked in John Lewis at Home, an old Woolworths, an abandoned home base, all sort of places. But it was getting more and more difficult. So it was with great joy, thanks to the generosity of our parent mission, which is Samaritans Purse US. They're fabulously supported by the churches in the US. So they have provided for the lease of this 40,000 square foot warehouse on the east side of Coventry, near the hospital in Walsgrave. And I was thrilled to move to the West Midlands. I love it here. Not only is it underknown and underappreciated, but it's you can get to a lot of places in the UK from 2 hours from here. So it's a fantastic hub place.
Centre, yeah.
Whereas before in Kent, you're on the other side of London. So yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. You can get up and you get to the Peak District for a walk on a Saturday. Whereas from Kent, you'd have to spend the first day of your holiday getting somewhere, right, and the last day of your holiday getting back. So I'm a converted West Midlander. So here we go.
You're probably like one of the few people who are really excited to move to the Midlands, especially Coventry.
Okay, so story on that. We were actually looking to for our office and warehouse to be a little bit further west, maybe Solihull or Warwick, and we were finding nothing. And we had a few deals, and frustratingly, they fell through. We were rejected for being a charity. We were rejected for being a Christian charity. Now, of course, the agents never said that. They was, far too astute, on the legal side. But that was the reality. And so we were needing someone to check the shoeboxes. So there was a really run-down warehouse just by Baggington Airport, by the Coventry Airport. So out of desperation, we thought, well, okay, that's more Coventry. We don't know who will come out, but we'll go for that. And the people did come, our supporters, and also the churches in Coventry and across here in Rugby too. The rest of the country may not think a lot about Coventry, but the churches and God's people in Coventry are passionate about the city and about sharing the gospel with the men and women, boys and girls and families in the city. I remember going to the first prayer and praise, the 6 monthly prayer and praise event that the churches do in Coventry. And from my experience in Tunbridge, I was expecting about 50 people. I went into the CLM, the big AOG church in St. 600 people there. You thought, hang on, this is interesting. And I started chatting to someone. We were talking about the pandemic. And they said, oh yeah, we prayer walked every street in Coventry. And it was somebody in Coventry that developed this app that once you'd walked the street, you logged that and it changed color from blue to red or red to the blue. Forgive me, I don't know the details of which way it went. And then other cities adopted that. So we, as myself personally, our family, my wife, we've been warmly welcomed, but also our ministry has by the churches in this region, and we're really thrilled about that.
Wow. So yeah, and your family actually, I take it they've moved up with you as well. I'll just cover off. You're married to Jenny.
That's right.
Correct. Yeah, and you've got a son named Nathan. He volunteers with you. Is that right?
Yeah, he has in the past. Yeah, during COVID, because we could have young people, you see. So I recruited. He was playing a lot of basketball at the time, so I recruited him and his basketball chums, and those young people. They were sort of sixth form was the first year. So when obviously the universities were shut down and everything, we were able to continue checking the shoebox. We had to do it socially distanced and all that kind of stuff. But he and his chums essentially checked over 100,000 shoeboxes in a warehouse just next to Screwfix in Tunbridge. So he's been involved.
And your other your daughter Hannah as well, and she's also helped.
Yes, but yeah,
voluntary stuff as well.
Yeah, very much been involved. So yeah, family affair. My wife also works in mission. She's her skills area is in finance and accountancy. So alongside me, she worked with OMF. Also served for a number of years with Release International, that serves and advocates for the persecuted church. So just at the moment, she's working for a small charity here in Warwickshire, the Staff Ambulance charity, which provides counselling to ambulance staff when they experience traumatic experiences. So that's a tremendous thing as well.
Oh, awesome. So it must be quite something to go from, to sort of be at a position where you're now purchasing a warehouse to put all these boxes in. And do you want to talk a little bit about kind of your journey, maybe starting with your journey, sort of where you've come from, your journey to faith, but then we can go and talk about like this, how this got started. And I know it got started in the States, but how you got involved and how it grew here. Yeah.
Yes. Thrilled to just reflect on God's grace in my life and just wonderful opportunity, a really rich experience I've had in world mission over the last 40 years. So I was privileged to grow up in a Christian families. My mum was a Methodist lay preacher. My dad was a very active Christian man. He was actually in the Royal Air Force, and he gradually figured out how to express his faith in that context. I was also at a Christian school where the staff had a vocational commitment to disciple the students, which was wonderful as well. The drawback with all that was just a bit easy, okay? But when I was a school leaver, I had the chance to go on a short-term mission project to Latin America, specifically to Peru. And during that summer, we got to visit a refugee camp of Christians. What had happened? The terrorist organization had turned against the Christian community in the mountainous south of the country. And so the Christian leaders in the country decided to relocate a community to the jungles in the north. And we had the privilege as a group of young people to go into that context. And the excuse was we were trying to put in a bit of a better water supply with some pumps and gravel. And we also built, with some other young people, some bridges to improve the access. But that really wasn't what it was about. It was about encouragement. These believers who'd been in the fires of persecution were really down. And so to just show up as a bunch of young people, just being who we are with the joy, the laughter, playing games and so on. I remember the pastor saying to me, this is the first time my people have laughed and experienced joy and played games in several years. Thank you so much for coming. Conversely, when we saw the resilience and faith of those ordinary Christian Peruvian believers that really powerfully challenged me. And I thought, this kind of easygoing, slightly flabby, one foot in the world, one foot in Christian faith kind of thing that I was doing. I thought, no, I want that kind of faith. I want to start expressing that. And that launched me on what's become 4 decades of involvement in world mission. That experience of learning from God's people in another part of the world, in another culture, has so profoundly affected my faith that I want everyone else to experience that and have their discipleship stretched and deepened, their skills developed, their faith stretched in the way I have. And that's what's really, I'm tempted to say driven. It's not been a sort of relentless thing, but it's a joyful enthusiasm that has taken me into serve in a number of contexts. So really building on those first experiences as a student, I then actually went on to the staff of Latin Link, which was the mission organization that was offering these short-term experiences for young people, and then moved on to really any context where I can encourage and inspire people to get involved in what God's doing through his people across the world.
Do you think that, or do you find that sort of the opportunity to go abroad to another country and do this kind of missional work, is there sort of an element there of, I'm trying to think, but because I've done that kind of thing as well. I love going on mission to another country, meeting new people, and I've always loved travel and everything. But for me, I certainly found it kind of somehow an accelerant to my faith and to kind of put you in the frame of I think the mission field and looking at and seeing the needs of other people. Do you think that doing that and going abroad and doing something like that has a greater impact on someone? I think what am I trying to say here? Is that something?
It's part of the mix. I mean, obviously, God can work really powerfully through situations of need, a challenging experience, an illness, a difficult work experience. Obviously, God and can grow our faith through that. There are a number of aspects of the cross-cultural experience. Number one, you go and you see a degree of resourcefulness that we don't typically have to draw on here in the UK, because we can generally expect if we get in a car and take a journey, we're going to arrive when we plan to. But in many countries of the world, much less developed ones, it isn't a given that the vehicle is going to survive the journey. So you see resourceful. I can't resist a quick story on the shoeboxes there. So there's some guys in South Africa. They're taking the shoebox. They had a truck of shoeboxes that they were heading from a city to a town to then call all the church pastors in to take a few shoeboxes, maybe 10 shoeboxes each, to give to 100 children in this village and that village and so on. So they'd arranged a rendezvous at 6 o'clock on a Saturday evening, but their truck broke down, and so they had to have another one sent. But such is the determination of these guys that they persevered. They got there, and of the other pastors had been waiting around for hours, but they still distributed the shoeboxes at 11 o'clock at night to the pastors. And then, there was no hotel, so what they did is they cut open the bottoms of the outer cartons that were used for the shoeboxes and made it into like a tube, and then that was their bivouac. They slept in the cardboard cartons overnight. And when you hear a story like that, you think, these are the kind of people we want to be partnering with. These are the men and women of faith that I want to hang out with. I want to learn from. So there's that kind of, you see that resourcefulness, you see that dependency on the Lord, which is great. The other thing, of course, when we're outside our own culture, we see things in other cultures that are different, sometimes different better, sometimes different worse. But I'm really interested in the different better, because you go, hang on a minute, why do we do it like that in the UK? And actually, some of the ways they're doing it here, particularly the sense of family and community that is much stronger typically in the cultures outside the West. I mean, I often have this conversation with our supporters around, checking the shoebox gift, because we here in the UK see, a shoebox gift which comprises some school supplies, some personal care items like a flannel, a toothbrush, and so on, and then loads of toys. We see that as an individual gift for a child at Christmas. So, when we're checking the boxes, someone says, "Oh, well, look, there's a book in here, but it's maybe like a Horrid Henry book. It's a book, but it's in a box for a 5 to 9 year old. Well, this will be too advanced for them." And I said, no, leave it in, because at the other end, it's going to a 5 to 9 year old who will be thrilled to give that book to his older brother. Yeah. Because they don't see it as an individual, Christmas present.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they see it very much. I am a 8-year-old in this family in Malawi, and I love my brothers and sisters. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm painting a little bit of an ideal picture. I'm sure they still scrap and fight and so on.
I was thinking like that. You give it to them, and well, it might be too advanced now, but it'll grow up and
that too. But it's so the things that are are different. So yeah, there is that accelerated growth.
I think. I would just encourage people to do it if you get the opportunity, because I think there's just something about going outside of your own culture. And it's right. You can do great works in your own culture and you don't have to leave. There are people who are dedicated to their town they live in. They do so much charity work, but I think just going out into something completely different, kind of scary. It does put you. All your senses are sort of being triggered.
I'll tell you another thing that I've observed, particularly one of my early roles was, running the short-term mission projects, and I would recruit the men. And I had a colleague, a female, who would recruit the girls, and we put them in teams, and they go off to Latin America. And what we find is that sometimes those that were most confident in the UK, when you took away their computer or their mobile phone and the kind of control and predictability of life in the UK, they couldn't cope. But actually, some of the, on the face of it, less gifted and confident people in the UK had an ability to come alongside children in slum areas of Latin America and build a connection. And we saw confidence grown. We saw individuals thrive who were not the ones that were thriving in the UK. And that was just wonderful to see, and to see the Lord building their confidence, beginning to express their gifting. I remember there was one lad who he had a real talent for drama, but he didn't realize he had. It was just the way he was an expressive person. He would sort of break into little songs and actions. And so he said, "Come on, Jono, when we were doing a presentation to the children, come on, you need to be the star of the skit." And he was very reluctant. But then when he did it, and we would be cheering him, and the kids were loving it, then you could see the confidence in this man growing. And so actually, I'm not this, lacking in confidence, not very skillful person that I sometimes perceive myself to be in the UK, and that people treat me like. God's gifted me, I'm valued, and he can use me. That is fantastic to see.
So what about the journey then from, how did you get started in this? 10 years ago, how I'm quite ignorant to this. So how long has Samaritans Purse been going for?
Okay, so we're the real granddaddy of the Shoebox project. So the project is 35 years old. So it started in 1990 when the Iron Curtain fell, and we saw on our TV screens the shocking pictures of the Romanian orphans rocking in their cots. And there was this upswelling of generosity from across the UK, and people donated all sorts of stuff for the orphanages. They piled them in trucks and sent them across, and there was some good stuff and there was some chaotic stuff. But amongst all that, there was a group of Christians in Wrexham, and they did the aid stuff. But then there was a lady there that said, you know what? What if we put some gifts, some toys in shoeboxes for the children? And then the children absolutely loved it. And the idea was shared, and it just mushroomed. So it went from Wrexham to Liverpool. Liverpool Football Club back in the early 90s got involved, the manager and the players, back in shoebox. And then it featured in Songs of Praise, and it just blew up, as the young people would say. And suddenly this small band of volunteers, okay, it was one thing for the Wrexham hauliers to provide 3 trucks in 1990. It was another thing when there started to be tens of thousands of shoeboxes. And so Dave Cook, who was one of those original guys, he'd heard of Samaritans Purse. He'd Samaritans Purse, they're this international disaster response organization. They're getting stuff to difficult places all the time. Why don't we talk to them? So Dave contacted the leader of Samaritans Purse, who's Franklin Graham, who is Billy Graham's son. Yes. Okay, and Franklin is very much a kind of activist, dynamic adventurer type. Let's do some stuff. And he, because of who he is as family and his commitment to the gospel, he very much turned to the churches in North Carolina, around where he had the offices of Samaritans Purse, and said, can you provide the shoeboxes? And also he was passionate, as Billy's son and as an evangelist himself, that there would not just be the joy of the shoebox gifts, but the churches giving the shoeboxes would take the opportunity to share the Christmas message of the greatest gift of all, which is Jesus. And then over time, I mentioned it already, but it's so important to mention it again, the children that receive shoeboxes were invited back by the churches to attend something called The Greatest Journey, which is a 12-week Bible club looking at different stories in the Bible that takes children on the journey of discovering who Jesus is, from creation through the fall and onto the rescue plan of Jesus, and then stories on, and then how to share their faith with others. God has just fantastically blessed this project. Scripturally, when you look at the Bible, God seems to have a special heart for children, and we know God's compassionate heart that all would come to know to faith in Jesus. So those things put together has given an anointing on this ministry, particularly The Greatest Journey. So last year, 11.9 million shoeboxes went out from sending countries like America, UK, Germany, Canada, and so on. Just an amazing number. And of that, 5.5 million children attended The Greatest Journey. 3.2 million said, we want to start following Jesus. What a beautiful thing. Also, what an opportunity for discipleship and nurturing children that puts in the hands of, I think it's like 80,000 churches, all denominations and types, all around the world doing this. And then the next stage is, well, I call this God just showing off, okay? Because this is not about Samaritan's Purse. It's not even about the particular church. God multiplies his kingdom. Because what happens, where there is no church, a children's club is started out of a shoebox distribution. Then the parents notice behavior change in their children. And they say, what's going on? So then they come to the children, can we come and see what this Greatest Journey thing's about? And before you know it, you've got a church. And then that church grows because the kids tell their friends, the parents tell, and then communities are transformed. So as I learnt about that in the kind of around about 2010, while I was still working for Overseas Missionary Fellowship, what I realized is that there was a form of church planting and an effectiveness of mission that was happening through shoebox gifts that was every bit, in a different way, every bit as effective as long-term mission workers who I'd seen spend 5 years learning Japanese and then a further 5 years building up a small set of relationships and seeing a handful of people come to the Lord. That was a profound, because the culture in Japan is so different from the UK, and there can be that Asian, yes, you're my friend, so I'm going to say I believe in Jesus because you like me and I like you. But has there been real heart understanding and change of culture? And that's so I honor and profound respect for those whom God calls to that diligent long-term service in somewhere like Japan, where it takes a long-term relationship to see a life really transformed and brought to Jesus. But I also rejoice in these initiation, these gospel seeds sprouting as a child has this memorable moment where they receive a gift, where perhaps it's the first Christmas gift they've ever had, and they encounter God's people. They make a commitment, but I mean, like our kids, some of those commitments will be life-changing and last, others won't, but they will be remembered. And we encounter Eastern European young people here in the UK who, as they maybe encounter Jesus here in the UK, they remember, oh yes, I got one of your shoeboxes. And that was a really memorable moment of my childhood, because when my country, like in Romania, when there were tanks on the street, Ceausescu was being shot on live TV, that was really frightening for a young child. And then to get a shoebox gift where there was a sense that people in the UK are thinking of remembering children in Romania, and particularly the Christian community. Now, we give shoeboxes to people of Christian faith and any faith, but those beleaguered Christians in Eastern Europe who received shoeboxes knowing they'd been packed by Christians in the UK and America, that was really faith nurturing to them, to know that they were not forgotten and that Christians around the world were praying for them, cared about them, were sending gifts. And so that nurtured faith. And so, you perhaps had, maybe like I was, the kid in a Christian family, not quite sure, and then experience this tangible expression that God is bringing me joy and hope through believers around the world. You think, okay, this God's kingdom community is something powerful,
part of something
big.
else, something bigger.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So, on the outside, kind of, I've been, involved in the traditional long-term Christian mission thing in East Asia. And you think, well, these shoeboxes, isn't that a bit fly in the, just a one-off moment at Christmas? But the more I spoke to people and spoke to our partners overseas, I realized that this is a link in the chain. Isn't it? It's what I've seen time and again is the local church, sometimes a parachurch ministry, and the shoebox is just another resource, particularly a resource that can initiate relationship with children. And then the local church takes over, and God takes over to birth communities of faith in some of the hardest to reach areas of the world. Through the shoeboxes, we've been able to initiate goodwill across faith divides in other faith majority countries in the world. Now, we can't write the details of these on websites and so on, but I want to encourage those viewing this podcast or listening to it, that God is birthing, American term, birthing communities of faith through these little simple shoebox gift, and through the courageous, resourceful Christian leaders that we get to partner with. So you can see why I was working as the operations manager at Tunbridge Baptist Church, with a vision for obviously the gospel in that town. But when I heard that Operation Christmas Child were looking for someone to head up the ministry here in the UK, I because of all I've said, I was learning that, because I encouraged Tunbridge Baptist Church to get involved in the Shoebox Project. Because what happened, we had a new children's minister show up at the church, and he come around to Christmas time. She said, "Oh, aren't we doing the shoeboxes?" And we said, "Well, we've forgotten about. What's all that about?" She said, "Well, I got one when I was in the war in Serbia." So she said, "We are doing this," and then through her, I started to find, because I'm passionate for world mission. I'm passionate for things that will get people involved in world mission. what I love about the shoeboxes is that someone who's got little to no interest in world mission can be interested to pack a shoebox, if only as a parent, to introduce an understanding of generosity to their children. Like, here, let's buy some gifts, but they're not for you; they're for you to give to another child, which is a wonderful little life lesson for a child to learn. So started on that, and then obviously as we can share, well, what happens to this shoebox? So my prayer and the teaching, the opportunity I'm putting before those supporters is, okay, no, don't just pack shoeboxes, get praying, get going, like we've talked about already. Go on, take the opportunity to go on mission trips, and it, I don't mind. Please go. I don't mind with whom you go, whether it's Samaritans Purse or Latin Link or all these wonderful other mission agencies.
I see you've brought one of these shoeboxes as well, haven't you?
Mhm.
Did you want to like share it and bring it up so we can see it and see what goes inside?
Brought a sample box here. We have these red and green boxes because increasingly shoes are no longer sold in boxes. So people, our supporters would find it difficult to get hold of shoeboxes. But the other thing is, a lot of shoeboxes now are hinged lids, and quite a lot of people, I am one definitely, it's really tough to wrap a shoebox with a lid with Christmas paper. Now, some of our amazing supporters do that, and they are beautiful. And please do that if that's your thing. But this gives an opportunity. It's a colourful, attractive box that the children can enjoy.
So it has. Can I just say? So it has on the front. It says boy and girl, and then
Three
mark
age
it.
groups.
And is that when you're packing it, you mark?
That's
that
right.
off?
So you choose to either pack for a boy or a girl,
Yeah.
and then for
You mark
age
the
2 to
age
4,
group, yeah.
5 to 9, or 10 to 14. And then the categories that we look at are personal care items. So the simple things like a toothbrush, face cloth, and so on. School supplies. There are still parts of the world where if you do not have your calculator or your geometry set, you cannot take your exam or go to school. So we love to put those things in. But then on top of that, it's the fun stuff like the teddies, the toy car. Here's a domino set, yo-yo. Very low tech, but toys that are great fun. The woolly hats, and again, here's a little bit of a cultural thing. People say, well, if you're sending the boxes to Africa, surely they don't need the woolly hats. Oh, they do, because if you travel to Africa, if it's 30 degrees at noon and then it drops to 15 degrees at 7 o'clock, you feel pretty chilly. And so the children in Africa absolutely love all that stuff.
Is there like a list of items that you follow and you get one of these boxes? It just tells you kind of like what.
So we give loads of suggestions, but the idea is it's not a kind of one of these. It's not really an aid package. It's a personal gift from one individual to a child. So we see wonderful creativity amongst our supporters. Sometimes they'll do a theme box. Everything is dinosaur, or everything is the same color. And then also what we encourage is people to put in a personal note. Time and again, I've spoken to young adults who say to me, they remember a toy, but they also remember the Christmas card or the photo of the family that packed the box, and just put a simple message: please enjoy these gifts. We love you. God loves you. Know His love at Christmas time. And that verbalizes the feelings that I was just describing, how the young people in Eastern Europe were feeling in the 90s and 2000s.
What is the most incredible thing, or the kind of the most bizarre and weirdest thing you've seen packed in a shoebox?
Well, the most one. I mean, I think I've left it in the car. The most wonderful thing that I always want to put in is a deflated football, because like a football, no one expects a big round football to come out of a square shoebox, of course. So what we do is we deflate the football, put in a pump, and then pop that in the shoebox. Compress it with a rubber band as well. So that's wonderful. And often, what I like about that is it's a toy that a child can play with their friends. So you're building relationship. Okay, so story there. There's a community in Madagascar, and there's this tribal group in the south, and their culture is they're really macho. Okay, and they have a reputation for being what's the word, cattle and sheep hustlers. So they steal sheep from neighboring. I mean, yeah, I'm sure it's a bit of a generalization. And so, because that's the culture of macho and go and grab what you want, grab what you need. The children's game, the girls line up on one side of the centre of the village, the boys on the other side, and they throw rocks at each other. That is their entertainment. And then, so the pastor comes on and says,
I grew up in Bedworth.
Is that the same thing? And the pastor goes, I just could not believe this. He said, Lord, we've got to do something about this. So he began to start some schools, and he also brought in the shoeboxes. And so then the footballs became, so I've seen video clip of the rocks being thrown, and then I've seen another clip of the children playing football together. So I love the football. No, the most bizarre thing in and I love this is the TV remote. Okay, picture the scene. You've got a family at home packing their shoeboxes around the coffee table in the lounge, in the TV room, and you can see what's happened. I'm putting in my toy bus. I'm putting in the Olympic lion, and then the 4-year-old is putting in the TV remote. It then shows up somewhere in Africa.
I just imagine, like, where's the TV remote? Has anybody seen a TV remote?
Exactly. So I love that.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Oh, that's very funny. That's good. Okay. So you kind of explained. So where it came from is because I remember that shoebox appeal as well when I was in, I think in the 90s when I was at school. I remember that coming about, but then you forget all about it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's kind of taken over by Samaritans Purse now, and they're managing it, and they're kind of. But what you're saying is it's birthed here in the UK, really.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And so it's grown from there, and
there's now this global phenomenon, just an amazing ministry in over 100 countries with this global community of thousands and thousands of volunteers. That's what I love about this project. Although Franklin Graham is a known evangelist and so on, Operation Christmas Child only works because there are thousands and thousands of ordinary men, women, boys and girls who are taking part. If you and I said we're going to do shoeboxes, we could probably muster 40 between us. We could throw them on a van, we could take them to Romania, and that would be it. But because thousands are involved, we can do 12 million.
That's amazing.
And then we're resourcing the church around the world.
And what about like the volunteers as well? Do you have people who are volunteering to go out and gift these shoeboxes?
So it's the volunteers at the other end. That's the other beauty of this. Yeah. Each country has a volunteer national leadership team. So the beauty of that is that we're not going as foreigners selecting the churches that are going to receive the shoeboxes. They are selected by trustworthy men men and women who are trustworthy pastors. Will do that, and they will select pastors who will not just use the shoeboxes appropriately, but also men and women of passion to see the gospel and mission grow in their countries. Because the national leadership team in each country says to one another and the partners, okay, where do we want to see the gospel break out next in our country? And that's where they take the shoeboxes. A big initiative in the last couple of years has been extending the shoeboxes out to the deaf community around the world. There's been just amazing opportunities there, because in many developing countries, deaf people are marginalized or really viewed as somehow impaired and second, third class citizens and ostracized and treated very poorly and all sorts of so to show value and love to these children has an amazing impact.
And you mentioned you've mentioned a lot of this is helping in war zones or after the wars as well. And I think you've done some stuff with Ukraine as well recently. And
yes. Okay, yeah. So Operation Crispinard is a major project of Samaritans Purse, but Samaritans Purse does a bunch of other stuff as well, in particular international disaster response. So here's another way where God is amazing. So Ukraine is the country to which Samaritans Purse has sent more shoeboxes over the last 25 years than any other country in the world except Mexico. So over a million, over 11 million shoeboxes have gone over that 25-year period to Ukraine. So think about that. There's a lot of young men and women in the trenches in eastern Ukraine who will have that cherished childhood encounter with God loves me through this shoebox. I wonder how many are thinking about that as the drones are whistling at that. Anyway, that's a side thought. But back on the blessing that God has done. So through that program, we have over 2,000 churches in Ukraine who regularly distribute the shoeboxes. The war comes, and we're able to pivot all those churches from giving out shoeboxes to distributing food and firewood in their communities and host. You remember at the start, a lot of the churches in Western Ukraine were hosting families coming, walking or traveling across from Eastern Ukraine. So time and again, we've seen the Shoebox Project has developed a network of relationships that then Samaritan's Purse is able to have immediate, rapid response in a disaster. So right now, the same thing's happening in Jamaica. We're networked with over a couple of hundred churches there for the shoeboxes, and those communities are now distributing shelter kits, so tarpaulins, containers for water containers, because obviously the pipes are broke and so on. And then so that's the immediate, and then working with those church partners to re-establish water supplies. There's an emergency field hospital that's been set up right in the Black River area, which was hardest hit. And this is another amazing service opportunity for Christians here in the UK, which is to go as what we call Disaster Assistance Response Team, DART. So medics, logistics people take unpaid leave, and then Samaritan's Purse pays their expenses, and they go and serve for a number of weeks at a time in using their professional skills in these disaster zones. Certainly the health service here in the country is very positive about releasing its staff for that, because it's tremendous experience.
It's beneficial as well, yeah. Exactly. They come back with the experience skills and knowledge, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So just amazing how amazing organisation, superbly supported by the churches in the US and by churches here in the UK. But I think the particular gift and what I would want to communicate to those watching this podcast is this is an opportunity for you to use and develop skills.
Yeah, so there's opportunities here, not just in shoeboxes, but in kind of aiding and assisting medically and
And the other thing that I'm bursting to say is there's mission here in the UK through this as well. Mm-hmm. So what we see is, because of the history where the Shoebox Project started as something by Christians, but they extended it very much to the community. A lot of schools got involved. You were remembering yourself as a school lad, packing the shoeboxes. So there's that kind of awareness. Everybody loves to pack a shoebox. So we can invite our friends and neighbors and colleagues at work who are on the fringes or beyond of church to pack a shoebox and then drop it off at a church like this one, which served as a collection center during our National Collection Week for a week in November. So then, as members of the community bring in their shoeboxes, we have the chance to share a little bit about what happens next. The kind of, much more briefly than the stories I've been telling, but a little snippet of that, and say, hey, you know what? Should we just take a moment to pray for the child that's going to receive this shoebox? And then you can say, and can I pray for you? And can I tell you about the mothers and toddlers group that we run at this church? Can I tell you about the food bank, the debt counselling? Can I tell you, here's our Christmas leaflet. Why don't you come with your family to our carol service? There's mission opportunity here. So that's at the church. And then, as I was mentioning about, we also check each and every shoebox in our warehouse to make sure the items are suitable and safe for the children. So we can invite in hundreds of people around the country. We have our big centre in Coventry where we do 100,000 shoeboxes, but we also do a church takeover, a 1-week church takeover of churches in Cardiff, Glasgow, London, and so on. And then again, hundreds of church people, but also non-church people can come and enjoy that volunteering experience. And we have the opportunity to share some of the spiritual impact stories of the children who receive shoeboxes and offer prayer for people. We have chaplains. So in the last couple of weeks, 3 people have come to faith in our warehouse in Coventry.
Wow, yeah, that's great.
So we're in the UK. We're not seeing revival yet, but we're praying and working towards that.
It's good.
So I want to commend the Shoebox Project also as a mission opportunity here in the UK.
And after the episode, we'll probably have some contact. We'll put some contact details on the description of the YouTube video as well, so that people who want to know about it and where to go and to join and help out.
Yeah. So when we're having this conversation, right? We've got another couple of weeks of checking the shoeboxes, but there is one further opportunity for taking part this year before the end of the year, and that is Shoebox Online. Okay. So this is a project, an opportunity where our supporters make a donation of £25, and part of that covers the shipping cost, but most of that cost provides for us to buy wonderful toys and gifts and the school supplies and so on to go into the box. So we buy all that stuff, and then our volunteers at the warehouse pick and pack those boxes and send it for you. Now, we have a particular mission opportunity because these boxes, we know exactly what's going in them and can provide certificates of manufacture and so on. We can get these into some of the hardest countries to import stuff in the world. We send them in plain boxes, so we don't have Christmas or the name of the charity on it, just a plain box, and we're putting those in the hands of Christians in countries where the church is persecuted. And this gives them an opportunity to come out of the margins of their society, go to the leaders of their community of another faith and say, we want to be generous towards the children in our community. These are gifts that have come from our friends across the world. Can we please give these shoe boxes out in the name of love to the children? And that is the beginning of developing goodwill across the cultural divides in some of these really challenging contexts. And what we've seen happen is the first year the shoeboxes are given, the second year the community leaders say, and tell us about your Jesus. Tell us about the Jesus that is motivating this extraordinary generosity of your community around the world to make these precious, beautiful gifts for the children. And then there is an openness and a trust to share.
But it's like it's saying, isn't it? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a way of just breaking down barriers and getting into those hard to reach places.
So that hard to reach places project, we're running that right up to the 31st of December.
So if you're watching this podcast, and it will be before Christmas 2025, we're get online and get
so it's a simple
shoebox booked and out.
So it's SamaritansPurse.org.uk. So search for that or search for Samaritans Purse, follow the links, and just encourage you to be part of this wonderful ministry.
So let's talk about so you're doing this 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I kind of want to go more like, let's talk about sort of some personal level things now.
Okay.
But what's like one thing you've learned kind of in sort of in the last few years maybe, and or some experiences you've had when you started out, and you've realized, I don't know, there's a better way of doing things, or
I have that. Through these last 10 years, I've been involved in a very significant change project for Operation Christmas Child UK. We had this background that we were supported by the community and some churches. We've very much over the last 10 years become much more confidently Christian and explained the mission purposes. And we needed to do that really also out of integrity, because with the advent of the internet, our friends in America were saying, "Oh yeah, that we're giving out the shoeboxes. Children are coming to faith," and some of our supporters here in the UK that were promoting the shoebox project were kind of being quiet about the Christian side because they wanted the school children to still give and so on. And so there was, and then not so. I understand the spirit of that, and that obviously they wanted the boxes for the children, but then the parents would say, "Well, hang on a minute. We've now watched this video and seen that you're really
Yeah,
passionately
you guys are
Christian."
like, you guys are part
Yeah,
of that cult.
yeah, and
Yeah.
obviously in relationship, we'd explain we're not part of that cult. We are giving an invitation in the way similar to a carol service or something, and we're working in partnership. And it's because obviously those that perhaps hostile to the project would envisage that there's a bunch of foreigners running around developing countries dishing out the shoeboxes, where it's not. It's all in the hands of the local church. All our ministry materials are translated into local languages. The New Testaments, when the children finish the Grace Journey, there are 80 different languages. Just beautiful stuff going on, and empowering the witness of the church. But it's that has been a tough change, and some of our leader volunteers, as we became much more confidently Christian, really from 2015 onwards, left the projects. Perhaps went to other shoebox charities that were not having any Christian aspect to them. So it meant our box numbers dropped, and we had to slowly recruit, build up the leader volunteer base. Now, the positive side was that many churches that thought Operation Christmas Child was perhaps like Comic Relief or Red Nose Day or something, suddenly think, do you mean all this amazing mission stuff's going on? We want to be part of that. So that's been so there's been that changeover. And I guess what I've learned is to be patient with the pace of change, because back in 2015 I thought, yeah, I'm passionate for this change to happen. This is going to be amazing. But it was seeing we moved the goalposts on some of our wonderful supporters who've been committed for many years, but not motivated with a Christian faith. They were motivated to make a child happy at Christmas.
Yeah.
And it wasn't their fault that, and just experiencing the pain and hurt from that. And, yeah. And either letting those people go, or, obviously we're very much extending a welcome to continue to be involved, but having to accept that actually they were stepping away, and then taking time for those that were aligned and excited about to find out about the project and get involved. Because there is a challenge when you're a seasonal project. You've got that one chance each year to engage people, and then it's, yes, you can have conversations during the rest of the year, but in terms of getting people's attention and new people's attention, it's those few weeks in November and December. So I've kind of wrestled a bit with God. Lord, this is an amazing project. We want to see so many more children blessed. We want to see this project used to draw people to Jesus here in the UK. So why is it going so slowly, Lord? And I've had to be patient, learn that. And I think also, and I'm lots of us can I identify this. Sometimes you'll kind of work hard to develop connection with this group or that person, and they don't join. You go, why not? And then you have to remind yourself. So I've learned to myself, it's actually not to take it personally. It's not about me. What else is going on in their life? What is the calling that God's got for them? And sometimes if you particularly if you set your heart on this group or this church to get engaged, and they don't. But then, particularly in the last several years, God's been opening my eyes to look who I am sending you. And perhaps a bit like kind of Jono back in Argentina, who was a bit reluctant to be the drama lead. What I'm seeing on the face of it, perhaps some less remarkable, less exciting people get involved. But then as you get to know them and you see their heart, and God develops their heart, and you see their confidence rise. You go, I'm so glad this person is part. And so I'm sort of learning to lean away from those who are not yet ready or engaging, and leaning towards those whom God is sending into our ministry. And that's the local church is like that as well. We have all sorts of types and stripes come into our churches, people who've got it all together, the more fragile people, but those fragile people, we've got so much to learn from them. And as they grow, it's just wonderful to be part of their lives and to learn from them and see their gifting. So and I've still got a long way to go, but God is making me a more patient person, and having a much broader view of how he works and through whom he works.
Yeah.
As I've been in this sort of big leadership change.
I think if you look at very often, Bible stories, but also you just listen to people's testimonies and throughout life, I don't think God always works through those very loud and big, important personalities and people. It is taking people who are just kind of a little bit seem unremarkable, people who are the least of the tribe, and bringing those people and I think God does that to show, hey, I can use anybody, and here's what I can do with this person. So I think that's there's a story in there in that, and that's probably what you're seeing.
Absolutely.
Also, I think it's I think it's a really that's a really good story of taking the charity back and kind of almost and just saying, putting that stamp on it, say we're a Christian organization, because I think what we tend to see is you tend to see these charities and these movements birthed out of churches.
That's right. Yeah.
And then they kind of get taken over and get secularized, don't they? And there's a saying that I've kind of come across recently, not my saying, it's something I picked, somebody said online, and it's so appropriate. It's loving the apples but hating the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much of, I think, that the church gives or is given, and that is a part of the outworking of faith and the outworking of our beliefs. We genuinely are called to do this. We generally are called to sacrifice and provide and help others. And people see that and they think, oh, it's great. I want to help out as well. But then it's like, oh, I don't want the religious bit of it. I don't want the Christian bit. I just want that good bit, because that's the bit that makes me feel good, because I'm a good person. And it's kind of and that's what happens. And then what happens is, like, it loses its heart.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And you've triggered another recollection as I think on the change project, which is what I've felt over the decades, that God's calling for me is to be an agent for renewal, not to be an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was very influential in me. He was always coming up with amazing projects and ideas and so on. And I thought, to be a leader, you had to be like that. But actually, as God's taken me through different opportunities to serve, I've been in some really quite traditional organizations, but I've been able to be an advocate, particularly for those that are not yet joining, particularly young people. And that can be, it can be an uncomfortable place. There's a few kind of banging your head a bit, brick wall seasons. But if God's called you to do that, he does with patience. You do see influence and change. But what I've learned through that, and even when the things didn't change as quickly, is to cherish what is to be preserved. I mean, just as you were saying, let's take the shoebox gift for the Christian mission purpose of it, not to be lost and to be, clarified and strongly communicated. So in that same way, as when I was working for OMF, they have an extraordinary commitment to prayer. So just as I was, encouraging them have a bit more flexibility towards young people being involved in the mission. At the same time, my prayer life was profoundly deepened by the decade that I spent in OMF, and I want to see, and whatever influence I had was to support and encourage that prayer influence and say, okay, so how can we pray in ways that the young people would enjoy? So I had a young guy who'd come out of Youth for Christ that I recruited, and he started a prayer weekend for the young people, and it was fantastic. Wow. We had 35. It was only a small thing, but like I remember straight in on the Friday night, we weren't all just sitting there in our chairs. We got the worship band going, and immediately people were up, praising, praying, and it just like started at volume 8 on Friday night. It just went forward from that, and I thought, isn't that beautiful? Because that's that blending the heritage of prayer, which goes right back in Overseas Missionary Fellowship to Hudson Taylor, because it was the China Inland Mission in 1865, and he was this sort of tour de force of prayer. This Hudson Taylor, prayer man of faith, and so on, and that shaped the way the China Inland Mission and then OMF was. To see that carried forward, but in a way that made sense and was compelling for young people. So that's my sort of point of passion, point of seeking the Lord. How can we integrate and renew great things in any organization, in any vision, and also bring freshness as well? And there's lots in Scripture that talks about renewal rather than just doing the new thing. So that's another big reflection for me.
What's the most significant answer to prayer you've ever seen, like either for yourself or someone else?
Okay, so one that immediately comes to mind, when I was we were looking for when we didn't have our paid for warehouse. Each year from August, September onwards, we would start driving around the area to see where there were to let signs outside warehouses and so on. And it got tougher and tougher over the years. And I remember one time I'd asked the agent, could we use this former home base site in Tunbridge, and it had gone quiet on me, and I hadn't heard anything. So anyway, it was a bit like this. We've been called in, me and a couple of the other elders were called into the youth night, and we were being interviewed on exactly this, our experience of Christian life, how we came to faith, and our Christian practices and applying faith in daily life, and all that stuff. And so I decided, okay, I said, this is a prayer request that I've got right now, and I felt I was being a bit cheeky with the Lord, saying, okay, I'm putting this out in front of the young people, so you better answer, because this is the faith of the young people that are. Because I said, come on, let's pray as a group now that we'll get an answer about having this warehouse. And I just knew in my spirit that God was going to answer that, because the young people wanted to see it happen. There were 20, 30 young people who were, because you can say, pray to be more holy or more patient, but I knew this would be a prayer that was going to be a yes or a no, and that the young people would see whether God was at work or not, and He was. And it was a fantastic location that we were able to check the shoeboxes. So I mean, not a massive answer to prayer, but I like that God humoured my cheekiness, in that kind of felt like I sort of just tilted things so that to encourage Him to answer. And my goodness, what am I like? But I just loved His heart for the young people there. That's particularly a passion of mine, to see young people engaged with the Lord, go deep with Him. So that's one example. I mean, in terms of a big provision example, one of my dad's entrepreneurial initiative years ago was using hovercraft as a tool for mission. So using hovercraft
Wow.
So the thing about
Okay.
hovercraft, they obviously they hover over the water, which means that they can navigate waterways and rivers and lakes that normal boats with propellers can't go through. So they've a lot of a number of lakes and waterways in the world are clogged up with waterweed, water hyacinth, which clogs the propellers, or they've got rapids. And so my dad raised up a group of Christian engineers and their young people to do various mission projects. Took the hovercraft to Nepal, China, Papua New Guinea, Peru, and then the one that I got involved in as a young person in Nicaragua. And but the thing about hovercraft, they're amazingly simple, but because they are bespoke, there's not like a production line of them. They're very expensive to build, and so we don't have the money. So we've got this invitation to take the hovercraft to Nicaragua to run on the rapids and the lakes there, to open up communications for medical services and for the gospel. But we didn't have the money for the project, and we were all praying very energetically, and we received at the sort of 11th hour, we received the massive Christmas bonus of a friend of the project who was a banker for JP Morgan, gave a six-figure sum to the project that enabled the hovercraft to be purchased and then move forward. And I've recruited 40 young people that went on that project. They were the Christian engineers. The president of Nicaragua rode on the hovercraft. We drove the hovercraft just to show its potential from the east coast of Nicaragua, which is the Atlantic coast, down the coast, along a river, across the lake, and through to the capital city. So effectively crossing the isthmus. I can never say that word. The little, between the Atlantic and Pacific. So it was confidently Christian, like the shoeboxes. But what an opportunity in that. Well, this was the mid '90s, so Nicaragua was recovering from the Sandinista revolution and the war and so on. So it was really a country on its knees. So it was bringing joy and hope and possibilities and medical services and so on to that country. So that was quite a big one.
You've traveled like many countries doing the kind of mission work and everything, and behind sort of enemy lines as such. Perhaps what's the most kind of scary moment you've had, or scary place to be?
Right. So actually,
other than probably being in commentary.
Yeah. I think actually right back the very first project, and again, of ignorance is bliss, I think, because I shared about this profound faith challenge of going to the jungle refugee camp. Well, we'd been there a day or two, and suddenly a commando patrol from the Peruvian army showed up to inspect, and we were at sort of a base camp, and then we were about to move up to the main settlement to do the water supply, and these soldiers showed up, and so we sort of literally had to break camp, stuff in rucksacks, and then trek through the jungle with these soldiers, and there was quite an uneasy atmosphere. And I remember at one point we were crossing a jungle stream, and there was some sort of boy's own. It sounds sort of fanciful, but anyway, there was this log across, fallen, trunk across the stream, and so you obviously got your backpack on, and you're sort of tottering along it. But there was kind of army ants running across the thing. So first, one of the soldiers slipped and has obviously put his hand down, and it all got covered in ants, and then the ants were biting him. Somebody else, but everyone just, when they started, everyone just fell about laughing, and it sort of broke the ice. And so we went up to the village, and they had to kill a chicken to feed the soldiers and so on, which is a bit unfortunate. And you kind of think, oh, they couldn't really afford to do that. Very, very poor. Now, but in retrospect, we learned that those soldiers had their intelligence was that the villagers were terrorists, not that they were the victims of terrorism.
Wow, really?
And the Christian leaders said, if we hadn't been there as Westerners, the villagers might have been shot.
Really? Wow.
And suddenly you go,
And you,
oh my goodness, we thought we were
you
just
know,
messing around playing football,
yeah.
but we'd actually preserved the lives of these.
Goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. That's just a,
I get the chills just thinking about it.
answering someone else's prayer, maybe, you know.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do we go from there? That's pretty cool. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I got a few more questions to go through. Maybe just some, some fun,
Fun ones, yeah.
questions here,
We've done some serious stuff, so we could do some fun.
What's one cultural tradition that you wish, us Brits could adopt from any of the countries you've been to?
Oh, I love the. It's a bit of a serious answer, but I'll try and think of a more fun one. But a serious one is the cousin brother and cousin sister thing.
Right.
So, in places like certainly the tribal states of Eastern India, if a child is orphaned, if your neighbour's child is orphaned, the neighbour will typically adopt that child as a cousin sister, and they call them cousin sister or brother. So, and they just become that's. Otherwise, the child would be destitute. But there's also, and particularly within the Christian community, that's an accepted thing. So when I trained at Bible college, there was I had an Indian evangelist in the next door room, and he introduced me to his cousin sister who was a nurse, and I was just. When we knew them well enough to over time to ask them a little bit more about it, and she said, "Well, is she really your sister?" And then the story came out, and I just thought, "Oh, I wonder if." Now I know adoption is something that is really gaining currency and is being shared as a ministry opportunity for us in the Christian community here in the UK, and just challenging us to thinking that is. I mean, obviously, it's a serious calling. God's got to, call us. But that's one thing. That sense of, the bigger family, the community. Whereas we can get very nuclear.
Yeah, in the UK, we're kind of, everybody goes off after church and they go home to their own families, and they go, and we sort of come to church with our families, and yeah. Do you think in some of the developing world, do you think the people there are a bit more sort of, I'm trying to figure the word, but sort of relaxed about life?
Yeah.
Whereas we're quite wound up here, and it's.
Yeah, my dad had a favourite saying that was he'd look at someone who was fretting and say that person has a firm grasp of the non-essentials. Firm grasp of the non-essentials.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's sometimes our culture, where we can get so anxious about something that, if you took a step back, isn't as important.
Not that important.
And that's not to decry that we don't try and do things well, particularly in Christian ministry. And we want to experiences, well, particularly when we're inviting friends and neighbours into our church activities. So we want things to go well, but we don't need to be kind of
that's one thing I've been appreciating is not to try to control everything and make sure it's all working. It's just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to let. So, for example, if I do bring someone along to church, or I get these two friends groups to mix. And I think I used to kind of have a little bit of anxiety of like, make sure everybody get someone that goes well, and they say the right things to each other and that kind of thing. Yeah. And now I'm just kind of like, I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to let it happen. Yeah. And if they don't get on, they don't get on. Yeah. You just kind of like, you're like, okay, well, just let's see what happens. Leave some room for the Holy Spirit, or just leave some room for and not try to engineer
manage
things
everything
too much, right?
Very good. Yes.
Now you've seen thousands of boxes
Mhm.
packed with essentials. You've had to pack, if you had to pack a time capsule shoebox, and don't tell me you've
Right.
done this already, but
No.
if you did have to pack a time capsule shoebox to be opened in 100 years,
Hmm.
that represents, your life, ministry, whatever. What items going in it?
Well, I've already mentioned about the footballs. That would definitely go in. I'm a third generation Arsenal supporter. So
Right.
my family on my dad's side comes from North London. I've explained, you know, I I love the skill and athleticism of the elite football players. I praise God for their ability, and yeah, although there's been something lost from the British game where it was sort of a bunch of UK people playing football, and now we're seeing
Yeah, that's
the global athletic elite come and play on our football pitches. But it is astonishing the skill that's demonstrated. I think I love to read, so a book would be in there, a sort of a fun novel. My favourite novelist at the moment is Amor Towles. He's a very good yarn spinner, a gentleman of Moscow, which has this very imaginative story about an aristocrat who's imprisoned in a central Moscow hotel, and so it tells the story of Russia over 5 decades as this man is in the hotel on sort of house arrest, and he can't leave the hotel, and different characters come in, and so yeah, that which speaks to me of a kind of imagination and creativity that's important to me. Yeah, I'm a yeah. So in terms of gifting and so on, I'm a writer. I'm a words person. So that's an important element to me. So yeah, so let's have pens. Let's have notebooks in that time capsule. Yeah. I wouldn't be a yo-yo because I can never make the thing go up up and down. Oh, I know what I would put, because this is my COVID thing,
Mhm.
and airfix planes.
Right.
So as a lad, I would do those, but I kind of rediscovered that as my COVID hobby,
Cool.
and yeah, and yes, yeah, and I just the enjoyment of being. It really takes your mind off that kind of concentration of painting each piece and then scraping the bit of paint off so you can put the glue on so it'll fit together. So yeah, so that'd be some of the things in the time capsule shoebox. There you
Cool.
go.
Okay, I've got another one for you related to shoeboxes. All right.
Okay.
So, Earth makes communication with a remote alien planet. Okay.
Yeah.
And you've got to send off this first shoebox out to the alien planet. What are you going to put in that to them?
Okay. Yeah. So it would be something. So I'd want to communicate that we are a race of there's friendship.
Mhm.
So how would we do that? I think it would, maybe a pair of soft toys that you could tell were friends.
Mhm.
So maybe that'd be what would be one thing. Maybe a game that's somehow communicated about eating. I remember there was a game I play with my children when they're young, where you kind of had cards and you made up different parts of a meal. So maybe put that in, so that kind of some communication that eating is important for people on planet Earth, and meals are a place where relationships are initiated and sustained. So maybe something like that. Oh, and then some kind of musical instrument, maybe a harmonica or something, because on planet Earth we love making music, don't we? And as a Christian community, music is very important as an expression of worship. Is that good enough? There's three.
I think
There you
that
go.
was very profound. Yeah, you really put some thought into that. I was, quite impressed.
I'm just buying time while I'm explaining it while I'm trying to think of the next one.
Okay, well, you rock up to the pearly gates of heaven.
Yeah.
St. Peter's there with a disposable camera. What's the first picture you're taking?
Well, inside.
Yep.
I've the children that have received shoeboxes.
Mm-hmm.
If they're okay, Jesus, can you just gather them all together, and knowing that, and then I'd want to have around me all those supporters, because it's not about, I haven't caused each and every one of those, but I've just been part of this throng that has resulted in that throng of children that came to know Jesus, where the shoebox may have been the big thing, but more often what we see is the shoebox is a small vital link in the chain of encounters and experiences that God uses to draw someone to himself. Yeah.
And the final question then. We're getting through to the end. Unless Jesus does return in the next 100 years from now, what is one thing that the generations of tomorrow should be taking away from the church of today?
I think authentic relationship. I know it's a bit of a buzzword, but what I mean by that is, if we as the church now can demonstrate a kind of robustness, not in a hard sense, but in a determined, compassionate, all-out loving sense, to not give up on one another, to keep persevering, keep loving, keep forgiving, keep learning together, I think that is magnetic, because our world has been promised so much. Technology, achievement, wealth, stuff said, you'll be happy, but people are lonely and miserable. And we have this countercultural opportunity as the church to demonstrate this beautiful, messy, rugged community. And so let the future generations express that in however works in their culture, in their times, but they must be together. They must not, that there is that strength in relationships. So, and God has promised that he will build and continue to, regardless of the debates and fallouts over theology and teaching and all that stuff, the reality of Christ's presence in amongst us through his Holy Spirit, of men and women who've acknowledged their sin, have come to faith in Jesus, accepted his sacrifice, and that releases power. And the living stones temple that Paul speaks about in Ephesians 2, to build that kind of unassailable community. And it may not be thousands and thousands of people, but it can be these precious pockets of robust discipleship all around the world. And that's what I'm trusting the Lord and future generations to build on.
Brilliant. Great answer. It's very good. And so make sure there's a few weeks left. Make sure you go out online, get one of these boxes, right? You can go to the website. Any young people who are thinking of, who like what they've heard and are thinking about, volunteering, or if you're in a profession where you could probably help, again, you go to the website and check out what help is needed, and
That's right.
Get in touch. So, thanks, Nick, for coming on.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share my heart and experience. Bless you.
Fantastic.
Well, thanks for joining us once again and listening to that podcast episode. We hope you enjoyed the content. And if you haven't already, subscribe, whichever platform you're listening on or watching from. And we'll catch you again for the next episode of Life Explored.